Okay, good. As Vice Chair, I'll call this meeting to order and welcome everybody to 2023, first meeting of the year. First item of business is to welcome our new board member, Jim McBride, and to be able to have him be able to vote, he's got to take the oath of office. So we will start with that, Jim, if that's okay, and if you'll come over here, you and I can do this together, okay? Right in, good. I, Jim McBride,
I, Jim McBride,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully discharge
that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the Office of Director
the duties of the Office of Director
of the Clinton Utility Board
of the Clinton Utility Board
of the City of Clinton, Tennessee,
of the City of Clinton, Tennessee,
which office I am about to assume,
which office I am about to assume,
and that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and of the State of Tennessee, so help me God.
and of the State of Tennessee, so help me God.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
I feel like we ought to clap. That's
I
really
know.
good.
And in Jim's case, it's nice to welcome you back to
Well,
the
thank you.
table, so
Thank you.
that's wonderful. Okay, and then the next item of business, since this is our January meeting, is to do the nominations for chairman of the board and vice chairman of the board. So I'll open the floor for nominations.
Miss Vice Chairman, I'd like to nominate Miss Vicki Violet as the chairman of this established body, please.
Thank you.
I second that, no vote needed.
I think I'm supposed to say, are there any other nominations? So, hearing none, we will close the nominations, and I guess all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any noes? And I appreciate that. I look forward to serving as the leader of this team, so thank you for your votes.
Feel like we ought to clap.
And then we need to do the same thing for vice chairman, so nominations are open, floor's open for nominations.
Madam Chair, I'd like to nominate my friend and compatriot Steve Clapp for the vice president post.
Okay, any others? Do I hear a second?
Second.
And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And there are any opposed? And we are unanimous on that decision, and I think we need to clap again.
For that.
I was.
He doesn't even know my name. He's putting Steve's on here just so he doesn't have to forget it.
You can't go wrong if you answer to Steve around here.
Exactly right.
Okay, obviously, we don't have anyone for public comment tonight, so we will scoot on past that, and the approval of the minutes is next, and we've all had a chance to look at those. Do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And all in favor, say aye. Aye. And that passes unanimously also. And next, we have our audits, and we have two men here that I was going to say guests, but they feel like family. But I will let our general manager introduce them.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Joe Brown and I go back a long time. It's been over 40 years, Joe. Do you know that? And you haven't changed, and I have, and that kind of irritates me, which is great. And Jim Boer, who's been with us for a long, long time and has changed a lot, over that period of time. We think the world of them. We appreciate their contribution that they make to us I think, and what you have offered in suggestions and help, we always appreciate and we take to heart and we implement. And Dudley, your relationship with Joe is just almost as long as mine. And you've changed a lot too. So if there's something that you would like, so if there's something you would like to add before you introduce them, go ahead.
Well, I love these guys, and their firm is very professional. The staff they send out here is always second to none, and they do a lot of utilities, which makes it beneficial for us because we don't have to start with this is what a dollar bill looks like, and here's where it goes.
Right.
They know how our business operation works, and it makes it easy for us to provide them with what they need. And they do a good job at helping us get our financials right, not only at year end, but through the year. I consult with Jim and Joe on how we need to do things And they don't, like some farms, immediately when the phone rings, they hit that button where it starts billing you. They don't do that. They're always glad to help, and they're a great value, and they're a great firm, and I'm just proud to know these guys. So.
Joe, you're up.
First thing I want to say is I really appreciate the board for allowing us to be of service. We really appreciate the staff y'all have here. You have excellent staff. They really do a great job, and I know y'all know that, but we just want to say that also because you are blessed to have such good staff here. Makes our job a whole lot easier. I will say also that I'm happy to say this year that we had no issues. We had no adjustments. Here again, that reflects upon the great job your staff does. We also, this year, gave you a clean opinion, as we have in the past, on the financial statements of the electric department and the water and sewer department. And it basically says that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. So that's a clean opinion, which certainly you all deserve. I don't know if you have the financial statements to look through. I'm really not going to comment on much there other than to say that really there's not a lot of changes this year. There's a lot of footnotes in there, but it's pretty much just bringing forward from prior year and updating the numbers and the verbiage there. Also, will say that in there is a statement that the management prepares that kind of explains the comparison with this year and last year's numbers, which is helpful kind of in understanding what happened this year. At the end of the report, we have a report on internal control and compliance. And basically, we look at your internal control, we look at compliance issues. Obviously, we're not going to find everything, but in the work that we didn't note any material weaknesses, nor did we note any non-compliance with any significant issues. So here again, as I said, it's another good year for you guys as far as the audit's concerned, and we're appreciative of y'all allowing us to be of service. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer those, or Jim will, and I will.
Any questions?
Just kind of generally, what are you seeing, how do you see the financial position of CUB compared to maybe other comparable size utilities? And did you see material changes in the other utility companies maybe in the area?
Well, no, if you look at y'all's financial statements compared to last year, obviously your bottom lines are up.
Right.
Okay, so I think comparing you all to others, y'all are up at the top as far as the size you are and your financial condition. You know, you don't have a lot of debt, and you know you're like in good shape.
Good. Did you see others struggle in the last? Maybe, are you starting to see any erosion at other places though, in terms of their side?
Not at this point.
Good. Okay.
We hadn't finished up all of our audits yet, but y'all are so efficient that we get up here early and get yours done.
That's good.
But from the two or three that we've done so far, you know, everybody's still holding their own right now. It's tough right now with TVA's, situations. It's tough, but y'all done a great job with it.
Good. Good.
Any other comments or questions?
Joe, since 1977, how many audits were not clean?
Yours, zero.
There you go.
Zero.
Good point you
And here again, I'm telling you, it reflects on the staff you guys have. And Dudley's been here, you've been here, and your
Yeah,
staff that you
well,
keep adding.
Dudley's carried the load here.
But y'all have done a great job.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else?
Anything? Okay, thank you.
All right.
Joe covers the water and electric department, I'll cover the pension. We perform the audits at two different times, but it's the same audit team, and we have a similar experience. And I'm going to echo what Joe just said about your staff, your management, Dudley, Tommy specifically, and his staff, and all the people in accounting. We ask for information when we perform the audit, and when we arrive, we have it all. If we have a question, we'll go to Tommy, we go to Dudley, we get an answer. We don't have that experience in every audit, so I want you all to be aware of that, how much we appreciate, and you all should appreciate, they're keeping our costs down by doing such a great job. So I think that's important to be noted. But in the pension plan, so again, we had a clean audit. We had no findings. Similar compliance and internal control reporting is at the back of the report. If you look at the audit report itself and try to compare it to last year's audit report, it will look different. That's because there was an auditing standards change that changed our audit report and how it looks presented to the board. It says the same thing, just in a different order and fashion. It's added additional auditors' responsibilities and management's responsibilities just to try and clarify, as part of the audit clarification project, clarify what exactly it is we do for the board. So that will be true on all three reports, the electric, water, and pension plan. But the pension plan is in good position, always has been. Your contribution that the departments make into the pension plan has been the same for, 7 or 8 years now, and it's significantly higher than what's required. So the department is able to maintain the plan and keep it well-funded.
I think the term was minimum requirement.
Yes,
Which is-
actuarially determined minimum, there's a minimum that must be paid in, and in fact, it's actuarially determined, the state of Tennessee requires that be paid in. You can't pay less. So that would be the minimum. And so we pay, you have historically paid significantly more than that amount. So just wanted to touch on that, and again, I'll open the floor for questions specific to the pension plan or the electric and water department audits. Happy to comment.
Any comments, questions, discussion?
Same question relative to where we're funded at compared to other utilities. It sounds like, I assume, given the financial position, we're kind of in a similar boat, kind of where we need to be at the
You
top.
are, and if I was supposed to lie, each one of them side by side, you're probably one of the top.
Good, okay. Yep.
Any other comments, questions? Well, before we vote, I think I can represent the board in saying thank you.
Yes.
We appreciate you and all the years that you all have represented us and everything you've done and are doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. All right.
Okay, so I believe we approved the audit at this point, so do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
And any more discussion, questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And that passes unanimously. Okay, and now we are at monthly reports.
Approval
No,
of
excuse me,
vouchers.
Vouchers, I'm sorry, vouchers. And we've had a chance to look at those, so do I hear a motion to approve those? Thank you again.
See you guys, thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay, do I hear a motion for approval of vouchers?
So moved.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, any questions, comments, discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of approval for the vouchers, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? And again, that's a unanimous approval. Okay, now we go to reports. So, Mr. General Manager, can you walk us through those?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We are still moving forward away from the $700,000+ hit that we took with our storms this past summer. Of that, as you remember, we had no FEMA, so we had to absorb that complete amount ourselves. That being said, we are now on track and on target to make at least some of that up, and we feel very confident of moving forward. In electric, for this past month, we're at $133,000 November, and we continue to exceed our forecast in water and sewer. Dudley, you might want to add some to all of that.
Really not a whole lot, like Greg said, you know, and Jim wasn't here, so if you remember those big storms we had in the summer, they really hit us hard, about $700,000 in expense. And because it was so isolated to just this area and
It
not
sat on
statewide,
plan.
there was no FEMA money for that. So we got hit with that as expense. So that threw us behind, and we're gradually moving forward with that. And usually by year end, those things kind of balance out, but we'll just have to wait and see. But overall, you know, the electric department had a solid month at $133,000, and the water and sewer department had a solid month at $61,000. So That's really all I've got to say, unless you got any specific questions.
I do.
When were those storms? They were in the summer, but when we looked at July to August, were they sometime in July? So the expense was absorbed in August, is that right?
Yeah, we put those in a work order to kind of track them, and
Okay.
then we figure out what we can capitalize on. But, for example, if a pole gets broken, then we can put a new pole in and capitalize on that. That's not expense. But if there's just wire laying everywhere and we gotta send guys just to hang them back up, that's expense.
Gotcha.
And when we do that work order, and then we do the, close it out, we get all the costs in, then we close it out in 1 month, and that's when most of the expense hit.
You remember how many poles got broken in that?
It was right at 50 poles.
Yeah. And to give you some,
That was in June, July?
It was in July.
Was it July?
It was
Okay.
July.
and to give you some context, if you remember 93, this big, great snowstorm of 93, which brought down a lot, that was 40-some poles, you know. So this is 50, and I'm telling you, that sat right on us. Not all the trees and everything. What a gum. And so 700-some thousand is really what we're expensing, and not, I mean, we're capitalizing more on top of that. So, I mean, it was a tremendous hit, which is why we have reserves in terms of cash,
Right.
for that very reason.
What is the criteria to get FEMA money? I remember we had talked about it before.
And I'm going to start, and Dudley's going to start laughing in here in just a second.
Not really.
Because it depends on the county and what the county suffers, and then how much the state suffers. How many counties in the state, whether Tennessee is declared a disaster area, and then it's those counties within that state. Now, go ahead and correct me.
It
Betty.
starts with the state,
Yeah.
and I forget how many millions of dollars. It has to be so many millions of dollars statewide, and they say, all right, now you can declare for FEMA money. And then it gets down to, as he says, the county levels, and whoever has enough money in the county levels at certain amounts. We've had storms before where we'd have only like $60,000 expense, but we get FEMA money because it's such a big storm statewide. The president declares it a disaster, and you get FEMA money. But this just kind of sat over CUB area and washed all our poles down and trees down. So it wasn't enough statewide to declare it federal disaster.
Okay, any other questions, discussion? Okay, I need a motion for approval for the monthly reports.
So moved.
And second?
Second.
And all in favor, say aye. Aye. And that passes unanimously also. And now, review of the project status report. Mr. Fay?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We're tracking 2 projects, and we've reviewed these, so there's nothing new to add. I can tell you the projects continue to go well, and they should be completed. We have no reason to believe that they'll not be completed on time and on schedule. Would you agree to that, Todd?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
So unless you've got a question.
Any questions, comments? Okay, and this is just for information, right? We don't.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then the approval of work orders. Can you go over those?
I can, and I've got 2. If you'd like, I'll run through them both, and we can
Good.
take them
Sounds good.
at one time. We've got work order 1479, which is about a mile worth of single-phase number 6 copper that we're changing out to a 1 0 all aluminum conductor aerial cable, which we like a lot. The initial estimate on this for the capital budget was $375,000. When Todd got through the calculations currently, now he thinks we can get it done for $344,278. So that's at Stony Fork, and I know that's been a thorn in those folks. I mean, it's been a challenge. This has been one of our worst performing lines on our system, so we're looking forward to getting this new aerial cable up there. We are so much fortunate, I think, and we appreciate so much the aerial cable. It's really performed well for us. So we're looking to put that in Stony Fork and about 0.8 of a mile on Crestwood Drive. again, this aerial cable, and it's going to give us flexibility, as we always look now with our FLIZR, in order to be able to essentially move power around and use these lines to do that. So both of these projects, the second one at work order 1500 rather, that is a little over. We budgeted 160, and our final work order looks like 176,550. So I recommend to the board approval of both work order 1479 at Stony Fork and work order 1500 at Crestwood Drive.
Okay, do I hear a motion for approval of both work orders? And do I hear a second? And is there any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And then the next piece, Greg wants to talk to us about the emergency load curtailment program. In other words, the rolling blackout.
A rolling blackout,
So
you
tell
know.
us about that.
For the first time in history of the TVA, they've gone to a step that has required and mandated that all 153 utilities go into a curtailment program that involved reducing firm power, and that's what these rolling blackouts are, considered firm power, and that's where we go by breaker. So since I wanted to take this opportunity, because I think, as Paul said to the church at Thessalonica, so you won't be ignorant of the fact of things concerning rolling blackouts. So if we look at 153 of the local LPCs, everybody has their own customized, unique load curtailment program that they have agreed to and signed off with TVA. Most of these things are similar in fashion, except when you start taking breakers out, obviously that's pertinent to the individual power distributor. But all 153, when TVA calls these steps, and there are 6 of them, step 10 through step 50, or 60 rather, when they call these steps, everybody's doing pretty much the same thing. And we get down to step 50 there, is that's when we get into the rolling blackouts. And I'm going to talk about each one of these because they're all progressive in what they do. And they'll call step 10. Now this again, it's designed when TVA sees that there's a threat to their bulk power. What they're talking about, their system now is being stressed. So they'll call a step 10, and they let us know that's in-house reduction. So all 153 power distributors, we're raising our thermostats in the summer up to 80, and in the winter we're bracking it down to 65. We adjust the lighting, everything non-essential, computers, all of that. We do that at our wastewater treatment plant, at our water plant, at our operations center, our mechanics, our warehousing. We do all of that to try to take the first step in this load reduction. And honestly, that does nothing. It's like turning a light out in your garage and looking for a reduction on your monthly bill. I mean, it is nothing, absolutely nothing. It's ridiculous in my opinion, and I'll say that, and I've said that to them. So step 20, that's where WATE is out there saying TVA is asking for voluntary reduction in non-essential loads. It's essentially a public appeal. Nothing. That's now turning off your TV and looking for a reduction in your monthly power bill. The only difference is what we do is we ask our demand partnership program folks, the participants, if they would consider voluntarily reducing their load. And that, because we have our water plant on this, we do get some response on that. It's better than the step 10, but not much. Things start happening when you get into step 30. And that's when you implement a system-wide voltage reduction of 5%. So now all virtual power plant operations, including, and we've got on-site generation, we're now kicking those in to and pulling those levers. and now it's a mandatory interruptible to our demand partnership folks. And very few, we talked about this, we designed this demand partnership program, and I don't know, I think there's some that's looked at it to try to put it together, but I don't really know offhand of one other of the 153 that's doing that. That makes a difference, and we force our voltage reduction level 5% below what our normal operating voltage is. So now we're capturing about 7,000 kilowatts out of that. Multiplied by 153, that would be something, but I don't know how the others are doing. And the question then would be, is how do you force a system-wide voltage reduction? How does that happen? It doesn't happen by this. There is nothing about this that's going to help us at all. So much focus is on this solar, and you're chasing a rabbit there. The technology's not there. There is no storage there. It's not dispatchable. It really is nothing more than making some people happy that they're thinking that that's positively affecting the environment, and it is not helping us at all in a situation like we had over the holidays. Many do it from this, and we used to do it this way too, where you send a crew, at least 2 folks, to the substation. They drop the panel, and they go in and they start punching buttons, because these are voltage regulators. And I made a bigger copy, so you can see it to the left there. This right here, that is 16 levels where you can increase voltage, and then 16 levels where you reduce it. We call it buck and boost. Boost it by level, 16 increments up, or you buck it, reduce it, 16 by 1 increment level at a time. So they're out there pushing buttons, okay? We do it from here. Now this is a picture, this is where we spent most of our, or at least some of our Christmas holidays, trying to get this thing going, and that's, we're not out in the truck, our people are not out in the truck. We've got 12 substations, and some of our stations are an hour away. So when they're calling for a step 30, and the only way you have is to get in the truck and go out there to a regulator and start pushing, but you can see that's not very effective. We do it all from here, and we do it with this. This is dynamic voltage regulation. This makes a big difference, and I thought it would be interesting, if I can find this thing. Well, let's look at this right here. This right there says, as you can see, step 30. Todd pushes that, and we're already into step 30, and it automatically does a reduction of 5% on our system, and it does it by line. So it's important that we know what is on. This is Park Road. This is give you an example. This is every line it looks at, because it has to look at every meter. And again, I could see this a lot easier on mine, Todd, I'm telling you. This, because now we just talked about, that's at buck 3, and that's the regulation of buck 3. The system does that dynamically, so there's no human intervention, and it drops out, because what you've got to know, oh, Dudley, I'm not happy with that.
Current slide.
Yeah.
Oh, next one.
It ain't me, buddy.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Fred. I was going to say, my
Use
gosh,
your air over there.
do something. All right.
You need to turn this driving back over to somebody.
All of this is happening because of that guy's picture right there. Todd Lockwood. He designed all of this. Everything that we have to make this automated, Todd, and I'm telling you, I can't say enough positive about the contribution that makes to us and our ratepayers. Everything you see there and everything on every one of these slides, Todd designed it, made it, implemented it, wrote the code for it, tested it, put it out on the line, and rocked and rolled with it. So that's what we rock. No one else has it, although we've offered it, but they don't have the in-house personnel, nor do they have the equipment online, free. We're trying to help them free. They can't use it.
We were getting complaints about damage when we cut voltage back.
No, and I'll tell you why, and that's a great question, because I'll answer that a little in the next slide or two, if that's all right. Because what we do inside essentially goes right out to our, this is at I-75 Industrial Park. It does the taps from there, that 1 through 16 and 0 through 16 on the other side. It does that remotely. But to get to your question, when we are into dynamic voltage regulation, we do that, it's forcing a lower voltage, and we do that in conjunction with what the National American standards are, or what we call ANSI, for demand. We regulate, that pumps back into our virtual power plant, which then impacts TVA to lower their demand. That's what they're looking for, getting load off. So for ANSI, it says, and the target now is 120. You're used to 120. That's what your receptacles are at your house. That's what your appliances are designed to do. To get into that golden range, it's 5% plus or minus. So you're either at 126 or 114. 126 volts, 114 volts, you're in what that range A service voltage ought to be. Your appliances are happy. Everybody's happy because voltage does float. There's no 120 dial it in and you've got that. But you need to be in that range for everything to be happy. Now, other than when we're regulating voltage, distance, primary feeder, the distribution transformer, the conductor, the service drops, everything makes a difference in your voltage. So in this, I've got it coming out of the substation at 122 volts. By the time it gets to this last guy, which is this last customer right here, it could drop as much as 7 volts, easy. Because every time it goes through a distribution transformer, the distance on the line that it has to go, whether the conductor is primary, whether it's secondary, and then by the time it gets to your service drop, what happens at your meter could be, in this case, it's 115. You see, so you can't send out the boat at 122 and it arrive at 122. There's a big difference. That makes a big difference in what happens, because if you don't know what your first customer on that line has, and you don't know what the last customer on that line is getting, then you can't be into voltage regulation in a dynamic way, because you can't guarantee the quality of service at the end of the line. Either you're boosting that so high that you're blasting the first guy out, or you're bucking it so low that the last guy is now, his appliances aren't working, his eyes on the stove aren't heating, and he doesn't know what's going on. We don't do that. We don't do that. Our guys are out there, these others, pretty much hitting a miss. Because when they go to the regulation at the substation and they say, well, we've got to drop voltage, and they do a $1.04 to drop it, they have no clue as to what's happened to the guy at the end of the line. And that is where you get your problems. That's where they're calling in. So step 30 is a 5% reduction. Step 40 is what we're getting into the next stage, and that's a 10% voltage reduction. Step 30, 5%, absolutely transparent, because we never drop below the 114. Step 40 is now they're asking for a 10% reduction. And we're talking our interruptibles, all of our major industrial customers, we call them on the phone, 30 minutes. We give them 30 minutes to get off. They get to the minimum required for safety, that their equipment is not damaged, and there's no environmental negative impact. 30 minutes, get off, because that's what they contracted for. And then we essentially go into this 10% curtailment. Every lever that we can pull with our virtual power plant we're now doing, and we drop into 10%. So you remember, we looked at this 120 being the target, 126 and 114 standard. When we're into a step 40, we go into range B, which is an emergency load. And that means we get 105.8% above the target of 120. or 91.7% below, which drops us to 110 volts. Now, things still working at 110, but not as well. They're impacted because it's not designed to work at that low voltage. Now, for us, not one of our 30,000 plus customers dip below the 110 because we know we're pinging those meters all the time, and it does that dynamically. And that's the beauty of this. Our system constantly looks, so it regulates continuously down and up, whatever we have to do. What's coming out of the sub, then we've got regulators on our line saying, well, we need to boost it, so we reduce it coming out of the sub, but by the time it gets to the last 10, we say, oh, that's not good. We've got a regulator out there, we boost it in order to assure that they get this. So, no, the answer is we don't get complaints about the voltage. Yes,
In your example, you gave customer one at this voltage and customer two at this voltage. So let's say you've got a line that's got 20 customers on it.
Yes.
And that 20th customer, you can't do this voltage reduction because you can't afford to do it. Can you go 15 customers down the
No,
line
we,
and not do
we,
16,
we
17?
could, but we'd have to have
What you do is just don't do that whole 20.
that's right, because the
just said
hardware out there couldn't justify doing that.
And that's where, though, if you get 500 customers out there, in the last there, you go and halfway out there, you put another set of regulators on the line. So you go, it drops here, then it goes back up, and it drops towards the end of the line. So you
Gotcha.
can put, so that's why we have on some lines,
On
you'll
the
have.
big lines.
Right, you'll have downline regulators in addition to substation
Okay.
regulators.
And all of that requires getting in a truck for everybody, not, I'd say less than 20 of the 153 can do internally, but what we're doing. They're out in the truck, try it now,
Even if they have the capability to remotely change that regulator, the thing that even further sets it apart is they don't have the capability of bringing it through their metering system to know what that last house is.
To know what that last
They're not set up to do that. They may have control of the regulator, but still they're taking a guess remotely instead of there in front of it.
So they're getting a call because HVAC's not working right. So, my dryer's not drying, my eyes are not heating, all of that because they don't know what that end guy's getting. So now, for the first time in history, TVA calls a step 50. And when they call this, they call it, and it's in 5% increments, 5 to 40. 5, 10, 15, 20 to 40. And they'll tell you what percentage. Now, this is firm load, where regulation is not considered firm load when we regulate the voltage. This is, we got to drop folks off. And then we've got a sequence of every breaker in the system to where and when to drop it, what's going to give us 5%, and eventually they're asking for 10%, what's going to give us 10%, in order to comply with this emergency curtailment, which is going to keep TVA's system from collapsing like they did in the Pacific Northwest. So when we receive this for the interruption, we go into rolling blackouts. We do 15 minutes, but not everybody does, because everybody can't. We were on call. There's 300 something, and we're sitting in, and it's, I don't know if this was Christmas Eve or the day before. After this 500, our friends in Memphis is a big system. Memphis is a big system, and they impact. When they call for this step 50, which requires breakers being turned off, they have to send trucks out to do that. So I mean, they're complaining they get no advance warning because they've got 30 minutes to drop it out too. So they're scrambling to try to do that. They didn't, by the way. But they turned off. They told us in the meeting, 300 plus people. They're saying they cut out 40 plus breakers, and 20 something couldn't come back in.
And we can try to close them back.
Because the load was so high. And the problem is, and the reason we picked 15 minutes, first of all, it's an inconvenience, not a hardship. 15 minutes is an inconvenience. Your house, freezing. It was 15 chill factor, 15 below zero in Memphis at this time. 15 below. So they go and they run out in the trucks and they open a breaker. And then, of course, they're running the other one to open a breaker, and they're running the other one to open a breaker. And then when they come back around, it's not 30 minutes. Sometimes it's an hour, or an hour and 12 minutes, or 18 minutes. And they try to close it back in, and everybody's house now is cold. So everybody has got everything on, and the system can't handle it. So the breaker pops back out. So then they're in a truck going down line, somewhere down line, where they have a fuse. And I'm thinking they're opening a fuse in order to keep everybody else off, and then open that section and close that fuse in and open that section. Do you see? Every breaker and every cycle and everything that we did, it was plus or minus 30 seconds. When they called for it, we had it off in 30 seconds. And the 15 minutes, we had it on. Every one worked just exactly like it's supposed to do in order to get those back on. Now, if something happens and we had to keep them out for an hour, and now we're in the same problem that Memphis is in, or an hour and a half, and we try to close it back in and it wouldn't close, through what Todd does, through Flizzer, we've got it out there, we would, from his control room, we would only open up a certain section of that line. So I say that because we're the only ones doing that. One of a very, very, very few, again, fingers and toes of the other 153. Am I right on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so how did we do? What's the timeline? On Friday the 23rd, they started this step 10. Again, nothing. That is nothing. And they waited a whole 4 minutes to go to step 20, And then about 45 minutes later, that's when the big stuff kicks in at 40, because they completely skipped step 30. Hey, forget that. Let's go right to a 40, which is the 10% reduction. And then 30 minutes later, they're into the first time of a 5% rolling blackout, which stunned us, and I'll tell you why. This is a picture of what we did and we started trimming our load at 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. If you'll see that down here, right here where that red dips down, that's when we started doing Shaving Peak, because we knew this was the one day of the month that we were now going to be charged demand. And I'm going to talk about that at the end. So we started trimming Shaving Peak early in the morning. So you see where this dip goes down. That's when we jumped. Our peak was from 9 to 10 a.m. That's when we hit our peak. And because we're shaving, I'm telling you, that was $88,079 is what we were able to shave peak off of that. And I'll talk more about that too. But when they talked about jumping into this rolling blackout, you'll see right through here, that's where we immediately responded. I guess a better picture would be this one here. This is us shaving peak. 6 o'clock in the morning we started shaving, and we shaved all the way up to 10 o'clock after our peak time, and that's when they call this step 40 in here. And then when they got to step 50, that's where you see this drop here. Now, what we're wondering is why, and this is green line is TVA's load. We have that because, and very few have that, because we're part of that virtual power plant, so they connected with us. They have to know what our loads are. And Todd said, well, we reciprocally need to know what your loads are, which really weird. No one ever asked them for that. So they agreed to that. So now we know what their load is, and we're seeing that it looks to me like they've reached their peak too. So why they called a step 50 becomes a question for us, because we don't see where that's necessary, and the data supports that. So, our peak again, 9 to 10. And again, they're going down at peak. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Because on Saturday, now we're into Christmas Eve, you know, they started at 5:22 in the morning, and we never come off of the step 10 and 20, or 30, which they didn't call, because that was still active from the day before. So at 5:22, they jumped back in to a step 40. And then 30 minutes later, they're in a 5% reduction. And then 15 minutes later, essentially, they're in a 10% mandatory reduction. Remember, 40, we're already at a 10% voltage drop. At 50, then we have 5% of firm coming off. We're opening breakers. And then at 10 more, then we're opening more breakers quicker, you see, in order to do that. So if you look at this picture, and I know this is busy, but this shows right at 5:22, when they called that, we immediately dropped. And then when they called it 10, we immediately dropped again. Because we're hitting that button that says do it, do it. So this is how we responded. And when it started to come back on, again, how it responded. But this little plus sign here, I like this thing. If you look right here is when they called the 40. 10% voltage. You saw how we did that, and you saw we dropped immediately, right? We dropped immediately. You see this boom right there? Their load continued to increase. And you know why that is?
Others can.
Or they're not doing it. They're not. And that's, I've got 2 meetings set up, 2 Vice Presidents, Todd and I, going to be talking about this because we've got the data. You know, there are questions about that. If they would have complied, then the question is, would they have had to call a step 50 at all? Because I don't believe they could. You see, they are now at a lower peak than what they were the day before. So yeah, we've got some serious questions. So the takeaways, well, what the takeaways are, is what was the individual LPC and direct serve response to the notification of step 40 on the 24th? Because I don't believe that they should have called a step 50 on the 24th. And what are the consequences for the failure to act? Because I'm not going to put our customers on a rolling daggum blackout if we're only one of the 6 in the group that are doing that, you know. I want to know, and they will know because they've got data at their subs. So I want to know who complied and who didn't, and if you didn't comply, what are the consequences for that? And if you did comply, is there a bonus? You know, because they're paying, when they called out at this time in step 50, they're buying spot market, anything that's out there is what they told us at any price. Yeah. So it could be 30 or 40 or 50 times more than what they're charging us is what they're paying on the spot market. So if you would have initiated step 50, if they would have complied, would you have to do step 50 at all? And how then, when step 50 came, where now you're cutting firm out and people are in the dark on Christmas Eve, how many comply with that? And I'm telling you, it better have been 153, you know, or we need to know why. So why was TVA's base generation load so compromised by the forecasted cold weather? I got at 4 o'clock, 4:08 today, I got information from TVA because I told them our board was going to meet tonight, and they're trying to justify all of this. No, they're showing us pictures on the webinar of guys out in the freezing cold trying to warm up a sensor, you know. I told them it gets cold every winter, you know. Back in 85, I took Ian out side that, on Washington Avenue because it was 24 below. And I said, I want you to know this is what 24 below feels like, you know. It was 5 degrees with a wind chill factor. What do they do in Minnesota? My God, you know. I mean, the vortex, what was just a few years ago, you know? What lessons learned have we learned there? Oh, I'm hot, really hot, because I don't think we should have had rolling blackouts. So essentially, we're saying the communication was subpar. We didn't know. Couldn't get word out to our customers. TVA didn't take responsibility. They wouldn't even call it rolling blackouts. Again, 300 are on that, right? And nobody's saying anything because everybody's muted. I unmuted myself because the guy says, we're not calling them rolling blackouts. And that's when I told him that I'm not talking.
Yeah. I would like to see what would happen if you could've got a hold of the guy.
Oh, I was not happy.
He-
Now they're calling it rolling blackouts, by the way. They are.
They
calling
changed their tune on that
Yeah.
one.
So much emphasis on solar energy at the expense of fossil fuels, and I think they need to take another look at that. I want Bull Run. I've got commitments on Bull Run. Bull Run is going to be great for Cub. It's going to be great for Anderson County. It's going to be great for our region. But I don't want them to decommission Bull Run unless they've got generation to offset that. 889 megawatts is what Bull Run generates, and that's coming offline in September. So we're going to look at that. I got a whole list, but I'm not going to give you any more. But I wanted to give you that so you'll be equipped on what our emergency curtailment is, how CUB responded to that, the questions that are posed because of that, and the assurance that we're going to track that down like nobody's business. So if there are any questions on that, I'm up for answering anything. And I'm sorry, it may seem like an awful lot of information, but you're equipped now, at least to respond when someone said, well, my power went out. Yours went out for exactly 15 minutes. KUB, Oak Ridge, Duke was out for rolling 3 hours, you know. Yeah. And again, I don't know what some of these others were, but nobody that we know of took it in 15-minute increments. Inconvenience.
Because of the hospital situation, I've got facilities oversight over there now. I was texting folks, and so Greg was kind of feeding me, so I kind of relay the hospital. And part of that, I was letting my other leadership know there were people down for 5 hours as part of the rolling roadblocks in Knox County.
That's right.
It was not.
And it's not an inconvenience, 5 hours.
No.
That's a hardship. That is a hardship.
We were exchanging texts and went down, and he finally texted me 4 or 5 hours and said, hey, it's back up now. I'm like, oh,
See,
wow.
if you were on my system, you wouldn't be out ever on that, because we would see that those and identify what we call critical areas. And it's not because somebody's on oxygen, you know. I mean, we get that all the time. Get oxygen bottles, you know. I know somebody that can get them for you, you know. That's not enough. That's not enough. But a hospital, major university hospital, emergency, things like that, Covenant Health, you know, we would make sure that those were excluded.
And the hospitals didn't go down. They protected us, obviously.
Right.
But the homes were still.
Well, I had to share with our friends down the road not to cut the breaker off for Covenant,
Yeah.
you know, because they're out there. I go, and I called it. Don't do that. So that's what I have.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Can you send it out to us,
Said what?
that presentation?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll get it on your board book.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, okay. I forgot. Yeah, it's in the board book.
If it's not, we'll get it.
No, it's there. You're right.
No, well, I'm sure it's not because, hell, we just put it.
About
put-
4:30.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not there, but it will be.
I was still typing things that we were going to tell the TVA. So, yeah, we'll get it on the board book.
Hey, Greg, were the results worth it? I mean, with all the rolling,
Well, see, yes, thank you for saying that, because the bottom line, what we get to the bottom line is we were able to stabilize TVA's power bulk system. We didn't have a catastrophic failure, do you see? And there were extenuating circumstances, which we understand. They had firm power contracted off system. So, I mean, it was that 20,
They lost 3,000
Yeah.
on Christmas Eve. They had contract that couldn't be delivered because a neighboring utilities, Duke, PJM to the north, they had system emergencies too. And even though it's firm, delivered, uninterruptible, they interrupted it.
but that goes to show, you gotta say, that 3,000 megawatts of firm threw them into this tailspin when Bull Run's running 889. You see, you're gonna lose that. That's gone. If next winter, that's not even an option, you know. So, yes, they Cumberland 1 and 2 went offline, you know. And again, that was freezing. Yes, sir.
There was an article in today's paper, I guess you've seen that, right, about natural gas plant to replace Cumberland coal plant and
Yes,
Sentinel.
and it was the.
What's the story behind that?
It was the natural gas that they had the problem with,
Right.
the sensors on the gas, you see. So,
But the way this article read is they're taking the coal plant out and
They are.
replacing it with natural
They're
gas.
there.
But the natural gas is not as reliable, maybe I mean, I'm not an engineer.
we agree. We agree.
That's what
But
this
at
article
least,
says, is
at
that
least,
right?
yes, but at least, and I talked to the COO, I had lunch with him a week ago. Was it a week?
About 2 or 3 days before this event.
It was, when he told us
We're
assured.
all good.
Because I told him we were concerned about this. And he said, no, we're all good. He assured us that we're all good. What they're generating on the footprint in the valley, they control. What they contract is not in their control. So why do we have base load that we count on base load that's not under our control? And that was the issue that we raised. Now, that's firm, that's good. I know we have no problems with that. Cumberland came online on the 22nd. On the 22nd. They've known this was coming for a long time, a week and a half anyway, this freezing cold Arctic weather. And they just brought Cumberland back online the day before. And number 2 was the day of, on the 23rd, you know.
But then they lost those two.
And they lost both of
They
them.
lost both of those coal units.
And that's when they had the guy with the little hat on out there with a heater trying to unfreeze a sensor.
Yeah.
It is beyond belief. I love TVA. I love TVA. And I love the management. I love what they're doing. I trust them, and they do a great job. Absolutely screwed this up. Not only operationally, in my opinion, but in terms of communication, you know, to fire this out with no warning to our good friends at Memphis and Nashville and Knoxville and all of the places that have to send guys out in a truck. You give them no warning, and at 5:22 in the morning, you got to scramble guys that are on call to get out in the truck and to get to the substations in order to open the breaker and hope for whatever you figure 5%. I think KUB just swashed out 80,000 at a lick. I guess they got their 10%, you know, but yeah, that's just wholesale. You're in the dark, and I appreciate it because it saves the system, you know. Those actions like that save the system. But what an inconvenience for their customers. And TVA.
What do power providers do that operate in a place like South Dakota where 30 below zero is normal?
They do. They're like I'm saying. I was in Minnesota with my brother-in-law, crazy brother-in-law. We're out hunting with boats. I'm not hunting. I'm in this little trench kind of thing because the wind's blowing. I was afraid to spit because it's freezing. He's out there with a bow, and wind chill was 54 below. Wind chill was 54 below. He killed rabbits. I went and ordered a pizza, you know. But 54 below. These aren't. They've got one, I forget, island, something that was enclosed that they didn't have a problem with. So a 3/4 inch plywood around these things to keep the wind from beating it to death, you know, and an electric blanket around it, the way I see it, would have saved all of this, you know. Doesn't take much. And again, we just went through the vortex. So up north, they've got them enclosed. We've got 2 that are not enclosed. But I'm thinking they're gonna be enclosed. But you thought, well, yeah, I thought they learned that when Bull Run froze up 4 or 5 years ago. Sorry.
No.
I've been in Moscow when the ambient temperature is 50 below. Yeah. They don't lose an ounce of power.
No.
It just rolls right on.
No. It gets cold in the winter and it gets hot in the summer. And there's 100 degrees difference between both of those, you know. You got to plan for that because it doesn't take much. To me, it doesn't take much. They may help me see something different. But we are not happy. And when we wrote, put a white paper on them, and that got a lot of calls. Because I'm old and I've been in this system a long time, there's a lot of utilities that look to us to speak, which we do. And then, of course, all we're getting is, I agree with Greg, I agree with Greg, I agree with Greg on all of that. Because those issues have to be brought up. And the fact that I was here in '85 when it was 24 below, I mean, I remember TVA has always done a great job of meeting the demand. They didn't do that now. And not only that, I think they panicked and I think they pulled that trigger too quick. That's what I think. And we've got data that supports that.
Anybody else? Comments? I appreciate the time you took, Greg, to prepare that. That gave me information I didn't know and makes me once again proud of CUB and the management and the leadership for making these things happen and being a leader. Thank
you.
We were head and shoulders. Thanks to all of you all for what you do, but thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other business that you want to share?
Yes, we've got one more thing on this cost recovery program for this PF, or we call it PFAS. It's poly. What is it, Greg?
Poly.
I looked it up to try to pronounce it, but then I forgot what it said. But I've asked you, and I sent you something through your email that has a lot of this information. It's a retainer agreement that I would like to get your approval to execute with this firm that is recommended by Tennessee Utility District Association and the National Water Association, because it's about this PFAS, which is these forever chemicals. And you'll recognize 3M on Scotch Guard. You know, that's part of this forever chemical. And the Teflon kind of stuff that they use on frying pans. You know, anything water repellent or water resistant, enclosed on carpets and things like that. They are all using these chemicals, and we've never tested. The last one we did, what, 2014, 2015?
2015.
We tested it. And of course, we don't show anything in our water that even registered on that. But again, I think next year we'll test again for that, but they're tightening the requirements up, if I'm not mistaken. We think we're going to be fine doing that also, but we'll have to see. But these utilities that do test positive, then the government's going to require them to do whatever necessary to reduce that in their water supply, and that could be substantial. So there is a lawsuit that is being a class action suit. La Follette's already in it. I think the utilities in Knoxville, First Utility District, and I think they're all 70-some as of September were in it, and more now, I'm sure. But if we sign on, what we're essentially is we're going to allow in this class action suit the attorneys that bring it about 25% of whatever the award is. And then that'll be proportioned up to the other utilities in order to offset some of the additional charges or costs that we'd have to do in order to mediate, you know, these the substance within our water supply. So it doesn't cost us anything. If they don't get anything, we don't pay anything. But if they do, whatever that award is, and it'll be substantial, and they're looking to make the money off of that, I'm happy for them to do that. Just give us our 75%, and we'll put that towards whatever we need to fix the problem. But I'd like board approval in order to enter in this retainer with this firm.
Okay.
You mentioned in here, 2 times we tested on the water treatment plant. We've never tested the wastewater treatment.
It's never been a requirement for that. Now, it may come.
But you expected it to be higher? Did I read that right?
Well, we expect that it won't be higher, but the requirement is more stringent. So whatever level that they give us to put at, where we didn't reach that, we didn't register on that, if they lower that, and we don't anticipate registering on that either. But there's a better chance since the regulation is going to be stricter, where it was so many parts per billion, and I'm taking this 10, now they're going to say it's 6, do you say? So because that requirement's lower, I don't know where we're going to hit on that.
Is it expensive to sample?
No. It's not.
Would it be worth our while to know whether the wastewater facility had a higher reading?
I don't want to know something that I have to do something about because wastewater's a whole different deal. And that's never been on the radar for them to test. It may get to that, but it won't hurt us going through the wastewater. What we want to do is assure that whatever our folks are drinking are 100% perfect.
But Oak Ridge is drinking what goes through our wastewater.
That'll be up to Oak Ridge to figure that out. Just like who's ever upstream from us, we've got to figure that out.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, do I hear a motion for approval of CUB to get into this program?
So moved.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
And I think we've had all of our questions answered, so all in favor, say aye. Aye. And any opposed? And that passes unanimously.
Thank you so much.
Do you have any other things, Greg, to share with us?
Other business, and I wrote this down, but I mentioned it in our in that little presentation, that PowerPoint that I did. But I'm going to go, and it's only take a minute if that's all right.
Yep.
We pay a monthly wholesale bill to TVA. We paid $5.2 million if you look in your voucher listing last month. And this has got 2 components, an energy component and a demand component. The energy bill is the total amount consumed during the month. Demand charge is based on this single golden hour. And that's why we said from 9 to 10 on the 23rd was our golden hour. And we shaved peak on that. TVA charges every utility, every 153, $10.35 for the average KW used in that magic hour. Whatever it is. For the whole month, the highest hour, that average in that hour, is what they charge, $10.35. Now, we charge our customers about 10 cents per kilowatt hour. So 100-watt light bulbs on for an hour is 1 kilowatt hour. That's about 10 cents. So when you go flipping these things on and off, don't think you're saving yourself a lot of money. 10 100-watt bulbs, 1 hour, 1 kilowatt hour. We charge you 10 cents. TVA charges us about 7+ cents for that. So there's a little less than a 3-cent margin. And then in addition to that, they charge $10.35 for the demand. So you can see what we're charging 10 cents for, what we're making 3 cents on. We're paying $10.35 more than that. So that's why during the rest of the month, you better get enough energy charges up there, or you're not gonna be able to pay your power bill. So every KW, every kilowatt is $10.35 to us. Now, last month, we peaked from 9 to 10 at 159.64 megawatts. That was a high peak for us, 159.64. Based on that peak, we'd have paid 1.6 million to TVA for demand charge only. Because of what we shaved 8.51 megawatts. That calculates out by $10.35, 8,750 kilowatts at 10.35 is $88,079. So we went from $1,652,000 paying TVA to $1,564,000, and that saves $88,079 for us. That's how it works, and that separates us from our friends because they can't do that, and they're not doing that. So their customers are paying for that difference. The board had asked me, Jim, a while back, and after you've gone, because we make a lot of money here. Our salaries are high. And then when they're questioned about that, they'd like to have, well, what would make us different from our good friends that are around us? And how can you justify these salaries in order to say, well, yeah, we're still getting a bargain? We do that in two ways: in the service level that we provide that others can't do, and these cost-saving measures. And this is only one of the things that we do that makes a difference, but it way outweighs the disparity between what our good friends in Oak Ridge are making and what our folks here at Cub are making. My friend Todd, and I know KUB has hunted on him, could be making more tomorrow if that's what he wanted. Let him go today, and he's working at another utility before noon tomorrow, making more money than he is right now. And the only reason he's still here is because we have pictures that we blackmail him. So, that's why we go through this, and we try to keep the board appraised of what's going on. That's all I have, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Todd, you drive real carefully going home. We don't want to lose you. We're done there. Greg or anybody else, anybody?
As long as I'm back by noon,
Yeah.
I work 2 jobs. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else have any comments, questions? Anybody? Well, Jim, it's nice to have you back on
It is.
board. Thank
It
you
is.
for being with us. And if that's everything, that concludes the meeting, and see everybody in February.